Yeah, thanks. So thank you, PNSQC technical team and the committee, and also the sponsors for giving me this opportunity to speak for the first time in PNSQC in the US. I usually speak in conferences in Spain and most of Europe, and this is my first time in US, and quite happy and excited. So as Heather mentioned about me, so my name is Praveen, and I work for Wipro Digital, and I'm based out of Zurich, and I support digital transformation for one of the largest banks in Switzerland. So, short about me, I'm quite interested in innovation, the new upcoming technologies. So that's where I thought I could speak about safety and security in the era of smart ecosystems. When I'm talking about smart ecosystems, I'm going to talk about the smart devices, and then slowly get into your smart cities, because that's something making buzz around the world. And I would like to show from a safety and security angle how that is remaining as an afterthought, and what are the possible challenges we could potentially face. So when we look at today's world, the physical and the digital worlds are blurring. So what's happening with the invention or progression with the cloud technologies, we are moving away from the constraints that we had earlier with on-prem technologies and servers, etc. So now the world is wide enough, and definitely um, uh, the smart devices and the smart ecosystem is growing by the day. So the Internet of Things is providing us a radical change in the way we are doing things on a daily basis, be it your smartwatches or be it coffee makers, with the turning of an alarm, and then you have your coffee machines switching on. So these are the kind, or your air conditioning switching on the moment you leave your office. So these are the things which are happening, and this Internet of Things is promising. At the same time, it's quite turning out to be risky as well, as the world is starting to embrace. Earlier, it was more of POC, and now it's becoming to mainstream. So going back history, maybe I'm not going too old. I'll just go to 1980s, for example. So you would have seen James Bond movie, where I myself was fascinated seeing him getting message from MI6 headquarters, uh, like report to this place, etc. So I was surprised seeing that coming out of a watch, and that was more of fantasy. And then slowly, if you look at little later, then in 1982, the first IoT device was a Coke machine, which was in Carnegie Mellon University, where there were four graduate students. All they wanted was, when the machine was loaded with iced Coke, they wanted to know that it has come. So that is how it started, as a humble journey in end of 1970s or 80s, I would say. Another in 89 was an internet toaster by John Romke. So what was more of a fantasy in and POCs in 80s and 90s, now it has become more of a mainstream use. So what are the key trends that we are looking at? So we are looking at smart houses. We are having wearables. Everywhere you use it. You have smart retail, connected cars, and then slowly you grow towards more of industrializing your activities with your industrial IoTs, smart grids, IoT in healthcare, and then finally smart cities and maybe smart countries one day. So this is how it's growing. We started early in 1980s and 90s, and POCs and fantasy, and then now we are more into a reality. So coming on to the predictions of 2025, so you're going to have the global IoT connections. The prediction is around 27 billion devices, 27 billion connected devices. And the revenue we are looking at from the organizations and companies we are doing, it's around 3 billion. And cellular IoT connections are going to be 2.2 billion. And if you look at that, cellular IoT connections to the connected cars alone would be 45%. And then similarly, the data generated by these IoT devices is going to be so huge, 2 zettabytes of data. So here we look at the size, the industrialization of the IoT concept, and how it is going to be affecting each of us on a regular basis. So that becomes like the prediction itself is so huge. And the recent state of IoT security said that nearly 80% of these IoT devices are vulnerable to wide ranges of attacks. So what's happening now is, earlier it was standalone smart devices are turning out connected to your network, and it is going to introduce lots of cyber security risk as well. And when you look at the survey being done, 90% of the consumers lack confidence in the security of these devices. Sorry, I'm just going to minimize it. Okay. So 90% of the consumers say they lack confidence and security of IoT devices? Is it because the devices themselves are not secured, or maybe it is the user who is not securing their devices? There are days, and even now, people still use admin as their internet router password. So that is how people use it, right? So we are not so secure. We are not securing our devices. So what happens is, more recently, if you see, there is a Dyn, which was an internet DNS infrastructure company. So it suffered a distributed denial of service attack, which brought down several sites, including Twitter, Guardian, Netflix. That is not too far. It was in 2015, I would say. So you are, the reason for that was, it was a botnet which was introduced, and it was compromising the IoT device through which it came, and that was responsible for the attacks, and it's like billions. And in today's connected world with social media, and so the integrity of the companies are at risk when such a thing is happening. Similarly, if you look at devices being hijacked to spend, your smart refrigerator, your smart TV could also become like a hijacked device and cause chaos. And when it comes to the safety, it's people don't have that much of a confidence in the devices. So we look at how we can improve that as we go through the discussion. So when we're talking about those devices on its own, smaller ones, they all come together is your smartphone, right? So your smartphone is going to be the smallest component of your smart ecosystem, and they all together lead you to into a smart city or your smart country, as we go. So what are the three critical things here when it comes to the security? Is you're securing your connectivity, and then your device security is important, and your service availability. So if you look at a smart home, you could have a smart TV, a baby monitors, your mobile phone themselves is smart enough, smart thermostats, speakers. So what are the possible threats that you could have? As I just talked earlier, your smart fridge getting hijacked, so your device hijacking is possible. Application denial of service attacks could happen, and you cannot gain access to your house itself, and your permanent DDoS could happen. Privacy data and internet identity theft could happen, and also man in the middle. Somebody is moving in between and taking your personal data. And definitely there are lots of mitigations which we'll have to do it, whether it is the companies which are preparing them. More than that, I would say the responsibility of people who are using it. So for your device hijacking, you can have your device identification, access control, device key management, application DDoS, again, have the security monitoring analysis done, changing your password, and also your authentication, encryption, and access control to be robust. And definitely that will also help you with man in the middle kind of attacks. We call it as spoofing. So your somebody gains access to one of the device and uses that to unlock and even open your door. So we may think why it is needed, but the way that the world is moving, obviously it's automatic cars, and definitely a very smart home is what it's not too far. People have started embracing that, and could be mainstream in a short duration of time. So your smart home is the smallest component of the ecosystem. They all make together, we call it the smart city. The smart city is not just based on pure technology, but it should also be multidimensional. So it should help from a human angle, your infrastructure, and also planning and management. That's why we call it as three pillars of a smart city. Earlier, if you look at the existing cities, or even before the smart city concept came in, so mobility, energy, all these things, infrastructure, were all siloed organizations, like we call as in agile new ways of working. We move away from siloed working into more of collaborative. So that is how the smart city concept is also. All these things collaborate together to give you a unique experience, a livable experience, I would say. So smart city is not just automating certain features. It's like integrated automation of your daily functions to enable a smooth way of life living. And similarly, smart cities will also improve the productivity and quality of life. And with lots of new technologies and IoT, artificial intelligence coming in, it's going to help you transform these cities. So securing these billions of connected devices is going to be of very critical importance. So it all starts with the home, with a smart home, how safe we are. Then we can think about how critical or how huge the effort would be for securing a smart city. So what is a smart city? Again, we call it as a complex ecosystem. So it's going to have lots of devices, lots of vehicles, and your healthcare, your cellular towers, your grid system, a smart grid. So all these are all interconnected. Your traffic systems are going to be interconnected. So that's where we call the it's called as a smart city is called as a complex ecosystem of smart devices. So looking at your IoT ecosystems, it's going to have lots of devices, software, communication protocols. All must function together. So if you look at what are the possible applications on the left that you look at, right? Research was done, and the end of the thing is a strong security implementation is needed for each of these devices. So if you look at web and mobile applications, some of the IoT characteristics that you look at is high data volume handling, variable policies, closed open platforms available. And then what are the possible or potential security weakness that you may come across would be poor code, lack of penetration testing being done, security testing, weak user third-party authentications, weak passwords, like I said, admin, etc. And similarly, when it comes to cloud, as we are moving towards a more of robust implementation of cloud in across financial services, healthcare, and all the service providers, you're going to have security threat there as well. So your private, public, and hybrid cloud deployments are going to be used, where again your code is important, how the refactored code is going to be secure, and also your policy management and communications, gateways, smart edge devices. So as we are moving towards more of a cloud and the use of smart devices are increasing, we call it a smart edge devices, where the device themselves is able to process information and the borders. It's not going to send all the data to your data center and take a decision and give you a result. So it's getting more smarter by the day, where the devices themselves will be enough to take certain decisions. So that again is going to be very critical, how secure it is, so that you don't have issues of this DDoS or insecure updates being updated, poor hardware design, etc. Similarly, that is where your IoT sensors are going to help. If you're going to in minerals or in um, um, coal stations, etc., so you want to use those kind of IoT devices, then definitely in those places you may have limited power, low bandwidth, but still your device should work as expected. So that's where the potential security weakness that you might come across would be design faults, firmware implementation is faulty, or inability to update. These things will still happen in those kind of remote places where it is being used, but still your manufacturer should take care of those security implications and also security features. Similarly, the type of data that you're going to use it is also going to grow, like your video, audio, location data is going to be shared. Personal information could also be shared from your devices, and then becomes your data storage is going to be important. And with lots of countries moving towards data protection and the robust data protection policies, all your devices will also have to fall in line. So it looks like it's not, you don't have a single one size fits all solution across, but we need to move towards more of a standardization at a level and also federation at your endpoints. So what is a smart software ecosystem, right? So it consists of components which are developed by actors both internal and external. So you're not going to have a single provider of your devices. You're going to have multiple people developing the devices, multiple people implementing those devices as third-party implementation companies, and then private persons and entities are going to use it. So you have all these people coming together in your smart software ecosystem. So the accountability and responsibility is very important. As of today, based on the experience that we have come across, that is missing because I develop software for a component and my responsibility ends with that. And then similarly, organization which manufactures an IoT, once they deploy it, they say, okay, my job is done. So we're changing the password is a responsibility of the end user. That's where it becomes very critical that we have a proper legal and organization framework which governs pretty much the IoT world. And then you have these architectures and applications. These are some of these scope of your software ecosystems, which everybody should look at. Your infrastructure, components, and also the data responsibilities and application themselves, how robust they are, how secure they are, and covering on top of that would be your legal and organizational frameworks. It could also be at a country level, and then maybe as we go forward, could be also a group of countries together coming and creating a legal and organizational framework. As in the European Union, they are working on that legal and organizational framework. So what are the possible security challenges, right? So as I said a little earlier, the earlier side, there is lack of standardization and regulation across IoT security. And many of the IoT devices lack the hardware capacity to support cybersecurity applications. So what are the possible challenges you might have? Your endpoint security, your network security, cloud security, and also security expertise. When I say security expertise, lack of security personnels available, at this scale. Maybe within the company level you might still have, but organizations or cross organizational skill sets is not available. The collaboration between organizations and the countries and the local authorities may not be happening. They may not have the enough budgets to support that. So those are some of the challenges you might come across. And from an endpoint security, various devices deployed across the world means multiple entry points for threat actors, and we need to secure those. And similarly, network security, again, complex networks demand comprehensive solutions so that complex attacks can be prevented. And cloud security is more important because as people move away from on-prem to more of a hybrid and then to a public cloud, it becomes even more need to secure our data and also our devices. So when we looked at who might do it, it could be people who could do it to just enhance their own hacking skills, and some may be just doing it for personal satisfaction. You still have people hacking certain things, right? Earlier were the days where people used to just pick up a phone and say that there's a bomb in a flight to scare and then people and spoil travel. But similar kind of a thing, it's moving towards more of these infrastructure. They might try to do it just for a personal satisfaction. So we'll have to be very careful. And similarly, professional cyber criminals are also there to steal your personal data. They call data as the new oil, and then also steal money from unknown citizens. It could happen, even elderly citizens. And obviously, the last state-sponsored actors would also do to harm countries, their adverse countries, I would say. It did happen more recently in a country in Asia where the power grids were all affected. And it was merely an act of a country, who didn't like this. So more of a state-sponsored actor. So those are all some of the things which the country and the local authorities should look at before going into this smart city concept, because it's catching up while across the world. Obviously, even countries which are not prepared infrastructure-wise or also policy-wise still moving towards that would be a critical danger. So what are the possible attacks? Energy, transportation, environment, connectivity, governance. All these things together make a person live happily and safely in a country or in a city. So when you look at energy, then public safety is at risk when your energy installations are being attacked, because it's got instability of the country's power supply. As I told, power grids may go down, and power grids can go down. And from a transportation angle, vehicular accidents can happen when your signals are being controlled. And similarly, your environment, your smart walls and your drainage systems could get affected, leading to overflows. And your finance could be affected. So from an energy side, right, your energy devices, you could even lose your meter values there, and obviously that's not going to translate into dollars. And also your transportation vulnerabilities and vulnerabilities in your devices which are supporting your transportation might make people get free rides, and then obviously your vehicles could be locked and people couldn't get in. So obviously it's going to affect you financially as well. Similarly, your environment can get affected, connectivities, and also your system governance on a whole. And your operations can be affected. EMS communication can be disrupted, energy maintenance systems, and your transportation service could be interrupted, and people can manipulate it. Similarly, environment, drainage systems, water systems can also be affected. And last but not the least, your privacy is going to get affected. Your people sniffing your smart meter could steal information from your devices and could be compromised. Similarly, your personal data that you have given in your ticketing systems could be compromised by these hackers. So these are some of the possible attacks that are possible when with your IoT devices in your smart city, spreading across your energy, transport, environment, connectivity, and governance as well. So again, a little bit of threat and countermeasures, where exactly it could happen in a day-to-day basis. Your power grid, when I was just talking about, one of the threats could be permanent denial of service attacks. An hijacked parking meter could also fall into the wrong hands. So when you have this DDoS, what are the countermeasures or mitigations that you can use? You can have robust authentication, encryption policies, access control, application level DDoS protection, and security monitoring analysis can be done. And another threat which could be possible is man in the middle within a smart home, somebody taking control of a device, and taking control of the other devices again. So your authentication and encryption is going to be helpful. Having a robust security lifecycle management softwares in your devices will also protect you from that. And another threat would be possible at an application level itself, your DDoS at your application level, your camera, your smart camera can be affected. So what are the mitigations there again? Device identification and access control, security monitoring and analysis being applied and updated regularly, that can also be helped. And another threat would be device hijacking, somebody hijacking your smart signals in your cities. That's still a possibility. And there again, device identification, access control, who gets access to it, security, robust security lifecycle management software is being deployed there. And any of the updates should be from the manufacturer, some kind of authentication happening between the device and the manufacturing update, so that not every device accepts an upgrade message which comes to you. Right, so similar to how we get Windows updates, we always ensure that it's from Windows. So those kind of inherent security systems, should be the devices themselves should be ready to identify those. So that's how we should be protecting from these threats and countermeasures. Whether our devices are ready today may not be, because of the huge number of devices. Not many organizations or the manufacturers may spend that effort there. That's where we need this standardization done across. So what is this objectives of the security? Obviously, the prime objective is to reduce the risk to a business, so that your data and information is confined to the user and systems authorized to access it. Not everybody can access it. And then the data and information generated can be trusted, and also service continuity is maintained. If you don't have those things, then obviously your organization is going to get affected. So from three pillars for the your security, cyber security strategy should protect those three pillars which I just spoke about. So which is your confidentiality, unauthorized access to devices is prevented, integrity of your data, how safe your data is stored and transmitted only to people who are required to use it, and then also availability of your devices 24/7. So these are some of the things which should consider the organization, that we call it a security by design, because security cannot be an afterthought like we normally do in our traditional ways of working, right? So you have your software created, and then you have your performance testing and security testing as the end of your SDLC cycles. But instead of that, in the new ways of working with Agile and DevSecOps, we want to bring the security into your design. Your code itself should be secure enough. So that's why we call it security by design at your device level should be important. So how you can do that? You can give a unique and private digital ID to your device, and implementing device and authentication. So you know that only when those authentication happens with those secure unique IDs, then the device can upgrade any of its software that's been deployed. So that's the objective of your security. So if you look at the different layers, as I told, security by design is the most important. And then you have your IoT devices and IoT layer, with your actual physical devices, and then your security requirements at your software level. So whether it's code verifications or data encryptions, and then your firmware updates, and these were all the software part of your different layers. Should one layer be compromised, then your entire ecosystem is going to get affected. So when we come up with those kind of cybersecurity strategies, we'll have to ensure that all layers are being addressed. And how do you secure your smart devices? First one is your secure boot, wherein you have your cryptographic code signing technique, so that ensuring only devices execute code generated with the original manufacturer, right? So, and only that gets upgraded or gets into your system, not any other devices. So some kind of an authentication is required there. So that's why we call it a secure boot. And mutual authentication. So every time a smart device connects to your network, it should be authenticated prior to receiving or transmitting a data. So that will ensure that the data originates from a legitimate device, not a fraudulent one. So you might have secure mutual authentications, and also it helps you prevent these malicious attacks which are happening. And then your security monitoring analysis is another layer of security which you can provide. And those softwares, you can capture data, the overall state of the system, endpoint devices, connectivity traffic, and helps the security people analyze it and identify any kind of potential threats or vulnerabilities that is possible. And then your security lifecycle management. Here it is like the overall system. Your lifecycle management feature should allow service providers and OEMs, we call it the original equipment manufacturer, control the security aspects of your IoT device when it is operation. So it should allow access remotely as well, over wireless, over the air, over the air wireless device key replacement also should be possible. When something happens, they should still be able to take control of those devices. Even and secure device decommissioning. What happens today is when you do an audit of your equipment, some of them will be running with old updates, but still with no use. People will not be using it, but still it might be connected to your network, and that is really vulnerable. So you need to do a proper audit and scrap any devices that are not used. Even within a server room, you're looking at it, then think of all these smart devices in your home. There may be one running in your corner, which you're not even sure of using it, but still it may be connected to the network. So that is really important. The security lifecycle management is also, these are the 4 steps which you can really follow, right, to secure your smart devices. Coming to your ecosystem roadmap, so when any organization or a city comes up with this kind of smart city concepts, they will have to they should need to have a clear strategy with outcomes, what they want to achieve. They can create a center of excellence, create innovation labs so that they can test these POCs and POVs to ensure that they understand the integrities of it, the challenges they might face, define best practices, ensure security by design for all these IoT devices, start small pilots, and then expand, not a big bang kind of implementation. And similarly, have a nimble, agile structure when it comes to governance, so that people are able to take ownership in the form of accountability and take quick decisions when when the disaster strikes. So the possible services, as we talked about, at the city levels, utilities, corporations, communities, citizens, and then you might need to have proper layers of the governance, right? So you need to have a smart technology infrastructure, have a good connectivity, accessibility, and security processes in place, data analytics. So you get those data and see how you can get into insights from that, and good public-private partnership, because it's not something just the government can do it. It has to have a good public-private partnership. And what are the possible outcomes that you're going to achieve with your ecosystem, your smart ecosystem? So your quality of life is going to improve, government efficiency is going to be achieved, health and wellness improvements, economic development, sustainability, public safety, and mobility. Not just transport. Gone are the days where transport was just not an A to B movement, a movement of a person from point A to point B. Now they want that to be an experience in themselves. That's where it's translating into wellness, mobility. So we are not talking about the activities. It is more of an outcomes that we need to achieve. So all your strategies should aim towards the set of outcomes being highlighted. So what are the possible security solutions available? So there are multiple tools available, but the core needs of these IoT security solutions is to protect the availability and also protecting the integrity. So when it comes to the security tools, obviously your firewalls are available, which might validate or block inbound, outbound connections with set of rules. It protects you from DDoS and potential malicious traffic from your external sources. And where it positions in your IoT layer, which I showed earlier, it could be in the actual gateways, the physical layer. It could be present. Then IPS, intrusion prevention systems, are also available at gateways and network. The physical layer, again, it prevents malicious attackers from accessing or disrupting a network, and it protects you from DDoS, malware, malicious network activities. And similarly, DDoS prevention service is also available. It prevents you from high volume DDoS as well. And protecting your integrity, definitely some of the tools which are available is your secure boot. So you know that it ensures that the boot's only using valid software. Firmware updates are not happening on the fly from any other devices or any other locations. So you know that you're receiving it from the actual manufacturer. So it is again at your physical level. And then your MAC, or we call it message authentication code. It proves origin and integrity of a message. So this is, you need to have these things at all layers in the layer which I showed earlier, your physical, your IoT, as well as your software layers. And similarly, your data encryption across all layers. The function is to complicate the tampering attempts, so that you're similar to your complex passwords. So it takes time to understand or crack your password. When you have a complex password, it's going to take time. So that's where the data encryption helps you. Also, digital certificate and signatures to know that the message origin from where it is being coming, and so that your device is able to handshake and transfer any of the devices. So mostly it happens at a device level. And there are lots of security solution providers. Just an example, so you have Palo Alto Networks. They support office data centers, etc. It provides hardware-based and virtual firewalls, device identification. First Point is another cellular IoT device. No, it protects you from that. Their solutions and products protect you from that. And it's mostly used by mobile network operators to secure the cellular connected devices from IoT threats. And similarly, Trustware is another provider who manages IoT securities and analyzes network weak points. Again, it's going to use by network operators. Network administrators can use them to understand any vulnerability points so that they protect it. And then there's another provider, Nanolock, which also is used at an IoT level, because it's slowly moving away from more of a smart home to cities and then industrial IoT deployments. Then you need protection at a scale. And that's where Nanolock comes with its own softwares to protect the devices, right? Linked to critical infrastructure like power grids, water and energy utilities, etc. So these are some of the providers with no special sequence. We just thought of bringing that to your view. So when we looked at these things more from theoretical things, now we look at some of the use cases. I just want to touch upon two use cases here. So one is on the Smart City Index. So if you look at Smart City Index, lots of cities have been brought into Smart City Index. The first one, Singapore, and then you have Switzerland, you have Zurich, Geneva, and then close to 3 to 4 cities in Australia coming into the Smart City Index, like Melbourne, Sydney, Adelaide, and Brisbane coming into it. And then in Austria, Austria as well. So when you look at the Smart City Index, there are lots of parameters that they look at. One is your health and safety, your mobility, then your governance structures, your health and safety, activities, opportunities provided to work in schools and governance. With all these things, they rank these countries. And out of 109 cities which took part in the Smart City ranking, Singapore came first with a rating. And one thing which really touched me is that they're not looking at the security angle. So maybe going forward, you can expect this, the organizations which are doing this, like the IMD, to bring in the security aspect as well, because as the number grows from 109 onwards, right, to thousands and hundred thousands, then the security should also be a parameter that these cities should be assessed against. Why Singapore? Because they topped the list because they were already much ahead for this AI disruption that was coming on their way, because they came up with a vision document, and the whole of the government view how AI is to be deployed across the society. When it talk about smart devices, they have started implementing AI as well, artificial intelligence. So the devices also take quick decisions on its own. And the Singapore framework also brings in the use of ethical use of AI. That's one of the features we have brought in. 2019 Davos World Economic Forum meeting they presented there. So Singapore has brought these things because they have a critical guiding principles to them. That's the Singapore, we call it Singapore's AI framework. And the decisions made by the AI should be explainable, transparent, and fair. And AI systems should be human-centric. So these are the guiding principles of Singapore's AI framework when they have started implementing the smart city concepts. And how do they translate that principles into practice? As you can see on the left, adapting existing or setting up internal governance structures to measure the and incorporate values, risk, responsibilities with any of the decisions that the devices are taking. And similarly, organizations that are setting up this kind of AI have the risk appetite, and they understand the decision the model is taking and the implications of it. So they have those practices and in place. And similarly, issues to be considered when developing, selecting, maintaining AI models, including data management, they have come up with their practices. And the last one is strategies for communicating with customers, the risk associated with it. So they have made that very clear, and they've got the buy-in of their people when they started implementing these things in their public places as well. So if you look at one of the examples, they've installed around 28 public pools with smart cameras. So it sets off an alarm when a person is drowning. and then you have your the rescue people coming and helping you. So they have started implementing it after getting the buy-in from the people. So this is a kind of a guidance, and the countries like the city state of Singapore has implemented.
Praveen, I'm sorry, I just wanted to let you know you've only got a couple minutes left.
Oh yeah, sure. Thank you, Heather.
You bet.
I'm just finishing. Yeah.
Cool.
So
lovely.
the next use case is New York. So you would have seen this, NYC. You have these devices placed across New York to help connect to internet, and they earn from the advertisements that's happening. You have seen it in New York. So, but here comes the real part with the threat. Hackers may steal millions of user data. So you might need to have better encryption systems from the devices, which is connecting to that. Your devices also should be secured, and also the actual device which they use, link NYC, should also be secured. And another threat here would be hackers redirecting tablet to malware. So you need to have series of filters and proxies that prevent malware from being installed. And similarly, USB ports present in these devices, if you see on the right, could also be used, with tampered with skimmers. So we'll have to be careful with that, because there were nodes of around 30 anti-vandalism sensors in each of these links to prevent this kind of skimming from happening. And the last year is spoofing attack, right? By renaming their personal Wi-Fi network to Link NYC, they could also do it, and people could inadvertently connect to the Link NYC, thinking that they have connected to this actual Link NYC, but they would have connected to some scammers, some other device or the Wi-Fi network created by the hackers. So that's also some of the threats and the mitigations that could possibly be done with this kind of devices when it is being rolled out into wider. So we can use the free Wi-Fi, but got to be very careful what we access, whether our devices, our mobile smartphones are secure enough. So that's more important. So conclusion, obviously there are lots of new things which the benefits your smart devices can provide you and the smart city can offer. But the significant vulnerabilities and poor amount of safety, security, resilience are real concern. That's why you look at 80% of the people are not comfortable or not confident with the actual devices. And similarly, key actors that should increase their attention are going to be your vendors, your regulators, your insurance companies, the research community, and your city, local government authorities as well. And there is a need to focus more on safety, security, and resilience, and to establish regulations of responsibilities on the vendors for liabilities. Today, they make those devices, but are they accountable for these consequences? I don't know. It's not simply not in place. So that should be brought in. And the last point here, which I want to highlight, is there need to be improvement with private-public partnership, and to improve the learning loops between emergency teams, security information providers, regulators, and vendors. So no siloed ways of working anymore, and there need to be collaborative partnership between all these actors to ensure that your smart devices and your smart cities are secured enough. At home, it has to be our responsibility and the manufacturer's responsibility. But when it comes to the city, it has to be pretty much everybody, because we are talking of billions. So sorry, I just overran by a few minutes. So any questions that we take, and thanks a lot for the opportunity. Hi, Ada.
Thank you so much for your talk. Excuse me. And we do actually have, I've posted in the chat, there's a virtual coffee area if you want to continue and answer questions there. So that's an option. And I want to encourage everybody to fill out the SurveyMonkey on our speaker form so that you can tell everybody how great Praveen's talk was. So,
and you can reach out to me. Sorry, go ahead, Heather.
Oh, go ahead. Absolutely, go ahead.
Yeah. I'm available in LinkedIn in the same name, Praveen Kumar space Prem. Please reach out, and we can explore. Obviously, it's not a one-way talk, so I'm open for your experience in your own places, different countries. So that's the only way that we can take our analysis and research that we do in our areas forward. So please feel free to share your thoughts as well, and any work that you have done in this area. That would also be really helpful.
Thank you so very much. This was great.